Sir, I believe we can start.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, Avantika, please start the program.
A very warm good morning to all the pharmaceutical academicians, researchers, and all the faculty members present here with us today. I, Avantika Gupta, would like to extend my very warm welcome to you all today to the session 4, day 2 of Atal FDP on drug engineering. I would like to welcome Dr. Saurabh Dhaya, coordinator Atal FDP, to say a few words and begin today's journey.
Respected all, good morning. I welcome Professor K. Valiyappan sir, Professor D.P. Pathak sir, Dr. R.B. Bodla sir, all participants, organizing team members, all DIPSA, DIPSRU faculty members, guests, to the second day of AICTE Atal Faculty Development Program being conducted in online mode at DIPSA, DIPSRU. All the participants have taken keen interest in the technical sessions yesterday. And we have shared the YouTube link for the same of the recordings of the sessions for the benefit of all learners yesterday. Today we have 3 technical sessions. The first one being taken up by Professor Valiyappan shall be on chiral science. The second one shall be taken up by Professor Madhu Chopra from Delhi University on the topic of in silico drug engineering. The third one after the in the post-lunch session shall be taken up by Professor Harvinder Popli on healthcare startup landscape in India. So these are the areas lined up by the top speakers for the day. And I wish you all a happy and peaceful educational journey today together with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Now, as we begin our session 4 today, I would like to invite Dr. Bodla, Associate Professor, DIPSA, DIPSRU, to kindly introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Valiyappan Kannappan, for this session.
Good morning, sir. It's a great honor of welcoming a gigantic personality, but simple it looks, and the ambitions and wishes. Dr. Valiyappan Kannappan has been worked as a professor in Quality Assurance Department of Annamalai University, and Dr. Valiyappan has completed his B.Pharm way back in 1983 from Government Medical College, Bangalore, and later on he completed his M.Pharm from the very prestigious Punjab University, Chandigarh. At that time, that was the only college in northern part of India, entire northern part of India, to offer postgraduate program in 1985. And later on, he did his PhD in 2002 from Annamalai University. And actually, his thrust area and the only area which is chiral research and chiral separations. And he has been a visiting professor of Philadelphia College of Pharmacy and the University of Sciences in Philadelphia. And Dr. Valiyappan's mission is to spread the prominence of chirality in life sciences, in particular the pharmaceutical sciences, and also to invite more researchers in the academia to chiral research landscape. And in fact, this is true. It is his vision and it is his ambition to invite more people. Why? Because actually now people are afraid of coming to a chemistry, and even after coming to a chemistry also afraid of studying the chiral research and chiral this thing. And in fact, a day should not come in the country that we hardly find any people who are working on this particular chiral molecules. So it's a great vision and visionary, and of course, I don't think it has to be. I think it has to be protected this particular area also. And he has done a lot of work on HPLC methods for solving pharmaceuticals and biomedicals problems, applications of chemometric tools for the optimization of HPLC methods. And Dr. Valiappan has been awarded with Professor M.L. Khurana Prize and Indian Drug Best Paper Award in 2002, and is also conferred with a Best Research Paper by the APTI way back 2006. And he has been a member of the management committee of the Chemometric Society of India and the associate editor of CSI newsletter for the period of 2010 to 13 for a 3 years period. And he has been nominated in 2008 as a visiting professor by the Indian Society of Technical Education, IST in Pharmacy. And Sir has graded almost 11 PhD and 65 MPharm students, and almost he has many, more than 65 research papers in various reputed journals. And he has been a life member of various professional bodies. And with this introduction, I'll hand over the desk to Dr. Valiappan Kannappan.
Well, thank you so much. I think it was difficult to introduce me rather. Can I share my slides now, or what should I do now?
Yes, sir. Please share your slides, sir.
And the moment I share my slides, I think I'll cut off my video, then I'll start my job. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. That's
Because video running में थोड़ा speed कम हो जाती है, so I didn't want to take a risk of that.
Yeah.
I'll start sharing my screen, and thank you so much for the nice words, and I hope I deserve all that. I'm not sure.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Saurabh, sab dikh raha hai na?
Yes, sir.
I'm audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Everything is
audible and
visible
your
clearly,
slides
and
are
you are.
So
yeah,
can I go ahead?
visible
Yeah.
also. Yes, sir. Please move on.
Okay, I'll stop my video. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Valiappan from Coimbatore, and it's a pleasure talking to all of you this morning. I deem it an honor to associate myself with the Faculty Development Program, or rather a webinar sponsored by Atal, entitled Drug Engineering, organized by DIPSR, New Delhi. Let me place on record my sincere thanks to the organizing committee, in particular to my colleagues, Dr. Saurabh and Professor Bodia, who introduced me, for giving space for chiral science. My mission has been, to spread the prominence of chirality in pharmaceutical education and research. During the last 30 years of my journey, I did notice a phenomenon called stereophobia that exists among both teachers and students. You can debate that. I mean, when I mean stereophobia, I mean an aversion or a hatred or a fear, lack of belongingness to stereochemistry. People feel, stereochemistry to mera subject nahi hai. I'm a pharmacology person, or I'm a pharmaceutics person. Mere ko chemistry se kya lena? But then my intention is that at the end of the presentation, I want to let you know that you be any branch of pharmaceutical sciences, chirality percolates into all those branches. This topic is of immense relevance and prominence in today's context, especially when there is an exponential explosion of chiral technology and a lot of pressure from regulatory agencies for the production of enantiopiate drugs, and also to have a mirror image perspective when performing pharmacokinetic, pharmacodynamic, or toxicological investigations, if the molecule under question is chiral. So the whole presentation is only relevant if the molecule you are looking or you're working on is chiral or mirror image molecules. So I understand the time slot is 90 minutes, and I should be able to get it done on time. With this note, let me get into my presentation on chirality at work in pharmaceutical sciences. So when I mean pharmaceutical sciences, I mean, you can take up any branch of pharmaceutical sciences. It's a broad category. You can add more to that, chemistry, pharmaceutics, pharmaceutical analysis, pharmacognosy, pharmacy practice, any number. All these subjects, you will find that chirality is relevant, and if it is, the molecule under question is chiral. So this is the sketch of my presentation, and the first half, what you see in black or gray shade, I'll be spending around 45 minutes where I'll build up the basics, that the story of the whole presentation, and then we'll move on to the second half, which is in red. We'll be spending maybe around 25 to 30 minutes on that. So I think we should be well in time. And another important thing I would like to tell the participants is that if you have any query, you please put it on the chat box, and you can put it there. And at the end of the session, possibly the moderator will take up the questions, and I'll be glad to respond to your queries. Okay, now let me start with a quote. By one of the pioneering stereochemist Louis Pasteur, who went on to say that universe is chiral. This is a very powerful statement, and it tells the whole story, the importance of chirality in research. Another slide, interesting slide by Sir John Comfort, 1981. He says, the sad truth is that we still learn most of our chemistry in flatland to the detriment of our science. What he's trying to say is that we do most of the chemistry in two-dimensional, whereas most of the molecules and the environment in which we work is three-dimensional. So when the molecules are three-dimensional, when the environment is three-dimensional, our chemistry need to be three-dimensional. So that's the point, and I think things are getting much better now, but more need to be done. So with these two courses, let me get into the first component, that's understanding. Let us try to understand chirality. Understand, most of you are fresh teachers or who are new to stereochemistry. I'm not sure if you are already familiar, then you just take these as warm-up slides. You find here a pair of enantiomers here, handed molecules. Kairos means, Greek word means handedness. So I have an object, I have a mirror image. If I cannot superimpose them, I call them as enantiomers. I call them as chiral twins. I call them as handed molecules, mirror image molecules, so on and so forth. If any drug has got such a property, you call them as chiral drugs. So let's get into chirality concepts. You find here a pair of enantiomers. This is R, and this indicates the absolute configuration, rectus and sinister. I'll just go into a few nomenclature before getting further. So we are trying to, how do you distinguishing enantiomers, and these are the chirality descriptors commonly employed. You find here, the plus sign and the italics D, which indicates the optical rotations, dextro, the rotations towards the clockwise, but it doesn't reflect the configuration. Configuration means, the shape of the molecule, the spatial arrangement of substituents or ligands around a stereogenic center or a chiral center. So it doesn't tell you about that. Another one is here, again, the notations commonly used are, you use a LEO or L notation italics. Again, indicates optical rotation, doesn't reflect the configuration. But these two terms are all become almost obsolete today. So they're not much used, except rarely, but we don't use that much. Then you find here a capital D and a capital L, indicating relative configuration. This is with respect to diglyceride, commonly used in carbohydrate chemistry. Normally this is used in carbohydrate chemistry. Even now it is used for some of the sugars and amino acids. L indicating, again, with reference to L-glycerol here. I'm not going into the details of nomenclature because it may take some more time. And only thing you must take in mind is that when you use these notations, your molecule should be presented in a Fisher projection formula. And the last one is very, very popular, and it has been accepted by the UPSC nomenclature system, and you call them as the Kahn-Ingold prolog system or sequence rule, where you assign absolute configuration to a chiral center. The notations are R and S, capital R, capital S. R indicating, rectus, which means clockwise direction, and S indicating sinister, counterclockwise. I'll be using these notations, so I just thought I'll let you know that we'll be using RS, DL most of the times. Sometimes keep in mind. Having said that, you find here a pair of enantiomers. Okay. You find here, this is a racemic mixture. You find 6 of them towards the left and 6 of them towards the right. Racemic mixture, equiproportions, of enantiomers, and it's optically inactive. The racemic mixture you find. This is an enantiomer pure molecule. You find all the hands towards one direction. it's an enantiomerically pure compound or enantiopure compound. Earlier, we used to use the term optically pure, but today you don't use the term optically pure. It's become obsolete because early days, we have only one tool to measure optical properties, polarimeter. So it's worked on optical principles, but today we've got a number of tools which work on chromatographics and NMR and all that. So the term more appropriate will be, you can use enantiomerically pure or use enantiopure. This is indicating enantiomerically enriched, which means that when you look here, there are 8 hands towards the left and 1 of them towards the right. So this is pure, point, not 1% of impurity. You call this as enantiomerically enriched or enantiomerically excess. Now, this is a common slide which you all know. You find here a molecule with more than 1 chiral center, and they got this is 2 chiral centers here. You find SS configuration. The mirror image is RR, and this is a MESA compound, and these 2 are related as diastereoisomers. I think I'll put it a little easier. This is a mesotartaric acid structure, and you're familiar. This is a tartaric acid structure. You find here, these 2 are related as enantiomers. Yes, configuration. Mirror image will have a total inversion RR. So the 1 and 2 are related as enantiomers, whereas 1 and 3 are related as diastereoisomers. This is a MESA compound, which has got a horizontal axisymmetry. So there's a reflection, it's an optically inactive. So MESA compound. Yeah. This is how this is a very important parameter which you commonly use when you work on chiral molecules or even in asymmetric synthesis to check the purity of the enantiomer which you have synthesized or you have separated. Enantiomeric purity is usually reported in terms of enantiomeric excess. This is a molecule with 1 chiral center. So 2 to the power of n, you get a pair of enantiomers, means you get 2 peaks here. This is a chromatographic, it's a chromatogram. So here you find both the peaks are of same area. So you put into this formula, the formula is major minus minor upon major plus minor into 100. So if the major is 100 minus 100, 0, 0 by you get totally 0. You find here the area is 90, 10. 90 minus 80 by 100, you get 80% enantiomeric excess. Here 98% enantiomeric excess. But in fact, when you synthesize the molecule, the enantiopure molecule, the enantiomeric purity you're looking for is almost 99.9%. That's how you look for. And normally the tools employed to measure enantiomeric purity are, these are the common methods employed. You have got polarimetry, CD spectroscopy, diastereomeric method. NMR can be used provided you use a chiral shift reagent. Chromatography is the most popular tool, and these are the various, the sample amount required, and the kind of, you need an authentic sample for a polarimeter. Chromatography is the most widely employed tool to measure enantiomeric purity, and in that even HPLC is the most popular because GC can be used provided the molecule is volatile. Capillary electrophoresis is a little expensive tool, so in normal, even industrial setting or in academic research settings, you will find that HPLC is the most widely employed tool to measure enantiomeric purity. Yeah. Having said that, now you just get into why you need a chiral perspective or why you need a chiral analysis tools when you're working with chiral molecules. So let's try to find answers from these menus. We'll try to find out why you need the image perspective and the impact of chirality on biological action and drug therapy. So I'll go through these menus. You look at molecules of nature, you try to find an answer here, then molecules of life, then you see the behavior of chiral molecules. How do chiral molecules behave? Like your behavior. Then we look at chirality and biological action. Then you look at the human system handle chiral molecules. 1 minute. So excuse me. So let us look into molecules of nature. If you look at molecules, I am sure you're familiar with these molecules, and I picked up 2 molecules here. One is morphine, other one is quinine. Morphine is a narcotic analgesic, highly demanding chemical structure. You find here it has got 5 stereogenic centers. These are the 5, 6, 9, 13, 14 are the chiral centers, and I've given the absolute configurations. And this molecule has got 5 stereogenic center, meaning it can have 32 stereoisomers. So morphine can exist in 32 stereoisomeric forms, and you'll find that only one of them, the levomorphine, has got the desired analgesic activity. This is synthesized by poppy plant, Paparum somniferum. Nature does it very beautifully. It only synthesizes levomorphine. In fact, if we have to do that, we need a very, very, very sophisticated techniques called asymmetric synthesis. We need a very sophisticated lab. It's all, but nature does it very easily. The point here is nature synthesizes only single enantiomer. Similarly, you look at quinine. Quinine is an anti-malarial agent which has got 4 stereogenic centers, 3R, 4S, 8S, 9R, which means it can exist in 16 stereoisomeric forms, 2 to the power of 4. And among that, this form, the one with the levoquinine has got the desired anti-malarial activity. So the point here is nature is very specific, and unique chirality is a hallmark of many molecules from nature. So to understand nature, you need a chiral perspective. That's the point. Now look at molecules of life. It's very interesting to look at these slides, and you find that all the sugars that goes to the building up of DNA, RNA has got D configuration. I'm referring to capital D means relative configuration. And look at most of the essential amino acids that goes into the building up of proteins. They have L configuration, very specific. And so you find that most of the biological macromolecules are chiral, like enzymes, receptors, carbohydrates, nucleic acids, transmitters, hormones. All these macromolecules are chiral, which means that to understand these systems, you need an enantioselective analytical tool. Now let's try to understand the behavior of chiral molecules. How it behaves. Like we have a behavior, chiral molecules behavior depends upon the environment. There are only 2 environments for chiral molecule. One is it's a chiral environment, or other is an achiral environment. So it depends where you place the molecule. If it is in a chiral environment, behavior is different. If it is an achiral molecule, the behavior is different. Like your behavior, you are in a seminar, your behavior is different. You are in a movie cinema theater, your behavior is different. You are in a classroom, behavior is different. You are outside with your girlfriend, your behavior is different. With your parents, it's different. So your behavior is governed by the environment in which you are present. So similarly, for a chiral molecule, the behavior is decided by the environment in which it is exposed to. So if you look at here, interesting thing here is in an isotopic or achiral environment, enantiomers exhibit identical physicochemical properties, and therefore it's indistinguishable under these conditions. So you cannot differentiate a chiral molecule in an achiral environment. I'll give you a simple example, which you're all familiar. Look at the assay of ibuprofen. Ibuprofen is an NSAID drug, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agent. It's got a chiral center shown here. It's R configuration. The mirror image is S configuration. You find, if you look at the structure, you find a carboxylic function. And normally this is estimated using an alkalimeter. You titrate with an alkali, you know the content of the ibuprofen, but here you get total content, but you will not know how much of R is present or how much of S is present. In other words, you will not know how much of left-handed molecule is present or how much of right-handed molecule is present, because the assay is done in an achiral environment. Similarly, even if you perform an HPLC with an ODS column, octadiazyl silica, it's a normal column, which you done on reverse phase column, and it is also not a chiral environment. So when you perform the assay in an achiral environment, you don't get to know the total, the enantiomers separate. You only get the total content. So what do we do? To get the independent enantiomers to be quantified, I need to create the environment chiral, or I need to perform a chiral analysis. That's the point. To you, an interesting is, so I said earlier, so the difference between chiral twins are how to detect normally, but becomes more pronounced in a chiral environment. Yes. Interestingly, biological systems and human body at a molecular level are intensely chiral. See, we are composed with, filled with chiral discriminators. We are filled with biopolymers, proteins, carbohydrates, amino acids, sugars. All these are chiral. So human system is highly chiral, and it can differentiate left-handed molecules from right-handed molecules. In other words, human body will act upon them differently. When I say act upon, I mean absorption, distribution, metabolism, elimination. All these ADME process will be enantioselective, which meaning that one enantiomer will be handled one way, the other will be handled a different way. That makes the system very complex. I'll give you a simple example to make the point much more clear. The simple molecule limonene, it has got, Saurabh? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, Dr. Walliappan.
Black ribbon on the outside.
Yeah, I don't know how to remove that.
Please click on hide. Yeah.
Where is that?
There is one option for hiding this black ribbon which is dropping from outside.
Yeah, I know. I just let me see where is that meeting. There is a new slide, chat, participants. It's blocking your vision.
No, not blocking. Like there would be something like, or you can just click it and drag it on one side. So then also sometimes it gets removed.
But that is disturbing your vision there.
Actually,
Where all the permissions are already with you. So that is the reason, like some of the participants, they were requesting.
तो मैं देख रहा हूँ क्या करूँगा मेरे को if I put something else it might go somewhere, I don't know. More में भी है लेकिन recording है, pause recording, stop recording, meeting. I don't know. ये कल आपसे पूछा था ना ये प्रॉब्लम है.
हाँ, कोई बात नहीं सर. Then
एक्चुअली ये सौरभ जूम में ये प्रॉब्लम होता है.
अभी वो नीचे दिखाया था. अभी वो नीचे चला गया.
वो नीचे नहीं है, ऊपर ही बैठ रहे हैं. वो कैसे करेंगे अभी ऊपर? मैंने कुछ कर लिया, ऊपर ही रहने दे. आपको ब्लॉक तो नहीं कर रहा ना?
नहीं सबसे ऊपर है वो. चलेगा सर, चलेगा.
क्योंकि वो
आ गए.
but I don't find any other, nothing to hide there.
एक्चुअली वो हाइडिंग का प्रिंसिपल है ना गूगल मीट में है, जूम में नहीं.
Pardon?
That was existing in Google Meet, not in Zoom.
हाँ, इसमें हाइड नहीं है ना?
इसमें नहीं है सर.
So can I go ahead or is it creating problem for the participants?
Nothing sir. You can go.
Okay.
Yeah,
So sorry.
we can move on, sir.
Okay.
We can move.
So it's a simple. Otherwise, I'm okay.
Yes sir.
In case
Yes,
I
sir,
tend,
completely,
in
sir.
case I tend to go fast, you please let me know because I have tendency to rush through.
I'll go a little bit.
Little more slower.
Only, sir.
Little more slower.
This space is okay.
Okay, because I get into subject. Sometimes I go, I forget the timing.
Actually, this is a subject. If you go fast now, it's catching is very difficult.
No, I'll go slowly. So you find here is a limonene with a single chiral center here, which means that this molecule can exist in a pair of enantiomers. I've shown it here. These are the enantiomers. One is the R-limonene. This is the dextrorotatorilimonene. Other one is the S-limonene. These two are enantiomers. Okay, fine. And you will find that this R-limonene has got an orange smell, whereas the S-limonene has got a lemon smell. So the difference between these two enantiomers is that when I change configuration from R to S, I am changing shape of the molecule. So when I change the shape of the molecule, it's believed that one shape is able to trigger. It's an olfactory sensor, the nasal tract. It is triggering, and the R is triggering a receptor site, giving you an orange smell, whereas the S-limonene is able to trigger another receptor site in the olfactory system of the nasal tract to give you a lemon smell. So a simple change in the shape of the molecule is giving you widely differing biological property. So you can think about drug molecules. It can be very dangerous. That's my point here. So these are called as mirrored configuration, and this difference in you call as chiral distinction or chiral discrimination can be chemically explained using this kind of reactions. You assume the body configuration to be R, and if the drugs are, one is R and the mirror image will be S, and the complex it forms is RR, and here the complex it forms is RS. As you see here, RR and RSS are not enantiomers, but these two are later as diastereoisomers. If it is enantiomer, you need full inversion. So here you find RR is retained, one of the configurations inverted. So these two are later as diastereoisomers, and as you are aware, the diastereoisomeric complex will have different physicochemical properties, and because of that, you have different biological properties and chromatographic parameters. But this is a simple way to explain that. It's much more complex actually. I'll give you another little more diagrammatic scheme which you will appreciate better. This is how you show chiral distinction or stereoselectivity. You have a receptor here. These are the binding sites. You call this as in pharmacology, Eason-Steadman model. ABC. You find here the upper part is the the enantiomer here. It's a mirror image here. In the first case, you find able to interact with the 3-point attachment. You call this as a good fit. Here you find the drug is able to only interact with one of the binding points on the receptor, and you call this a bad fit. So the one with a good fit is called the eutomer, and the other one is called the distomer. So whenever a pair of enantiomers, you must understand that one of them will be able to fit well, whereas the partner may not be able to fit well. So the one which is fitting well or has a desired activity, you call them as eutomer. Other one is called, I'll be using this term frequently, eutomer, distomer. I just let you know what definition is. Eutomer is the enantiomer of a racemic drug with the desired biological action or the action which you are looking for. If I'm looking for a hypertension action, that is a eutomer. Any other action is called the distomer, is the enantiomer with the undesired biological action or the action you are not looking for. Okay, and the impurity is normally referred to here as isomeric ballast or stereoisomeric impurity. So these are the terms which I normally use here. Okay, having said that, we'll go back to now. So we found that biological system or human body is highly chiral. It can differentiate left-handed molecule from right-handed molecules. Now, what about the drugs that we use? There are only two players here. In drug therapy, there are two players. One is the patient or the biological system. Another one is the drug or the medicine which you use. You find that major proportions of the medicines are chiral. And and these drug molecules are believed to interact with highly chiral biological systems. I'll give you some data here, and see, this is the data approved of drugs. A little old data, but then later I'll show you the more recent data. 2004 to 2006. You can find this in FDA websites, and you find here, there are 67% of these are chiral. 28. This is racemic drug 5%, enantiomer single chiral centers 18%, multiple diastereoisomers 2%, enantiomer multi-chiral centers 47%, and achiral 28%. You find that you put together 67% of the medicines in use or in market are chiral, which means that that's a very, very important part of the drugs are chiral, which we employ. So what you must understand is the biological system is chiral, and the drugs that we use are also chiral. So with this, you find that both the partners. So the biological targets are chiral, your receptors or whatever you may call it, these are chiral, and so are the molecules, the drugs that we interact with them. So when you have both the partners chiral, then you have a wide range of possibilities when the human body acts upon them. And now let's take a look at how human body may handle chiral twins and look at the pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic consequences. Yeah. So it's a very, very, very fundamental slide, which you're all aware of, any branch. This is a racemic drug here. You find a racemic drug, the oral dosage form. You're taking it into the biological system. The first stage is pharmaceutical phase. The pharmaceutical phase, you will find drug disintegrates, then dissolves, disintegrates, dissolves. What comes out of that is called the pharmaceutical availability. Then this enters into the pharmacokinetic phase, where you've got the ADME process, absorption, distribution, metabolism, elimination. Then what survives out of that is called the bioavailability or biological availability. Then that gets into the pharmacodynamic phase, where you've got the ligand-protein interaction or drug receptor interaction. You get a response. Yeah, so you get a response. It could be an effect, or it could be sometimes toxic. So but the point here is, in this sequence, you find that all these sequences can be enantioselective. Pharmaceutical phase can be enantioselective, pharmacokinetic phase are enantioselective, pharmacodynamic can be enantioselective, which means that by definition, racemic chiral drug means 50-50%. But the moment you take into your biological system, you will not know, because one of the drug may be absorbed faster, other enantiomer may not be. One may be distribution protein binding may be more, one may be less, one may be metabolized. So because of these parameters, finally what you get into the receptor is not very sure. We are not very sure how much goes into that. So to understand, you need to track the enantiomer separately, and to do that, you need a chiral analytical tool. I think that's my point is clear. What I'm trying to say here is, you take a racemic drug, you will not know how much of each enantiomer is present in the biological system. To know that, you need to have an analytical tool which can separately quantify the RNA, the left-handed molecule from the right-handed molecule. Because our biological system, all these processes are enantioselective, because these are mediated by enzymes. Enzymes are chiral. So I'll give you some examples to make this point much more clear. Look at pharmacokinetics, for example. This molecule is salbutamol. This is a bronchodilator, a single chiral center. So the molecule exists in a pair of enantiomers. So this is R enantiomer. This is the S-salbutamol. And S-salbutamol is inactive. It is not active at all. The R form is active. It's a bronchodilator. You call this as a eutomer. So in a stereoselective metabolic study, they found that in a biological system, in human system, in the model which they studied, the R enantiomer, the eutomer undergoes faster metabolism than the inactive S enantiomer, meaning that the R enantiomer is eliminated quicker, which is required to be there, which will give the desired activity, is eliminated. So you find there's a drop in the biological activity. So the undesired inactive molecule stays, the active molecule is metabolized quicker. So there's a problem here, and this only if you perform a stereoselective metabolic investigation. So such things can happen. So to understand, this is a kind of complexity that there are a number of examples. I'll just give you one. So here what you find is enantioselective metabolism. One enantiomer is removed, other is not removed quickly. But in this case, the desired molecule is removed quickly, which is leading to a problem of drop in biological activity. Another interesting example to highlight the pharmacokinetic complexity is, so you look at this, two drug enantiomers is dextrabiprazole and this is levorabiprazole. This is, both these are proton pump inhibitors used as an anti-ulcer drug. This is yes, you look at the parameters here. So Cmax is 576 for dextrabiprazole, whereas it is 234 in levorabiprazole. All the kinetic parameters are widely different. The area under the curve, nanogram per ml, 1972, here you find 460. T half, 2.7 hours, somewhere around that, 1.57. So you find the pharmacokinetic parameters between enantiomers vary widely. So it's become very important that if the molecule is chiral, you need to perform enantioselective pharmacokinetic investigation. Even if you, for example, you are performing a bioequivalent study, if the molecule is chiral, then if you do a regular bioequivalent study, gives you no data. The data will be of no meaning. So the point is that you have to be very careful when the molecule is chiral. There are a lot of examples in pharmacodynamics. I don't think I'll go into all those and scare you. I'll give you one example or two examples. So when there's a racemic, chiral drug which is racemic, both enantiomers present, and there's a possibility for enantioselectivity in action, then the distomer can have a wide spectrum of action. See, one enantiomer has got the eutomer is a desired activity. The other partner, distomer, it can have a wide spectrum of action. These are experimentally proved. For example, the distomer can be equipotent, no issue. The distomer can be less active. The distomer can be inactive. It can have an undesired side effect. It can antagonize the effect of eutomer. Stereoselective biotoxification, independent therapeutic value, metabolic inhibition. So all these possibilities, somewhere around 9, 10, these are experimentally proved and available drugs in the market. So the point here is, which means that you should be very careful. If it's a racemic therapy, you cannot assume that both of them behave similarly. They behave totally differently. Very, very, very important. I'll give you one or two examples to make the point clear. Look, propoxyphene, I'll take that. It's a very interesting case. Propoxyphene is these two are enantiomeric pairs. Of course, there are two chiral centers here. Don't worry about that. This is called dexpropoxyphene. This is called levopropoxyphene. This is analgesic, used as an analgesic. This is used as an antitussive. See, these two are enantiomers, but different therapeutic indications there. The total behavior, the use is different. Today, these two are separated and marketed as two different products by Eli Lilly Company USA. And this is named as Darvon. And this is named as Novrat. Even the naming, the chemists are so innovative. They're given a mirror image name as well. DARORVON. You find here NOVRAD, Novrat. So what I'm trying to say is, two enantiomers, totally different activity. They are separated, marketed as two different products. So very, very, but they're patented, and you get a lot of money out of that. So this is a unique example. And there are many more examples. I don't think I'll be able to see one more example I can give you. For example. It's less active. So Salbutamol, we just saw it's less active. Say ketamine, for example. Ketamine. It's an anesthetic agent. You find here, yes, ketamine is eutomer. This looks a desired activity. The other distomer, you find it got a side effect. So you don't need this. So in such cases, you might sometimes need to separate and then market as a pure product. You find a number of products in the market, like from cetirizine, you got levocetirizine. From ofloxacin, you got levofloxacin. And omeprazole, you got esomeprazole. These are called chiral switches. I'll come to that later. But depending upon the requirement, you might purify and give a pure drug. So it depends on that. So I just want to let you know that when you have a racemic drug, the enantiomer's behavior will be widely differing, and you should be very careful with that. Now let's give you one or two examples on the toxicity. There are a number of drugs which are withdrawn from the world market because of stereochemically engineered drug toxicity. There are a few examples here, and these are the drugs, terodolin, bifenadrine, delivolol, phenylamine, and these are their therapeutic uses actually. These are the toxicity which they have engineered toxicity, and because of these enantiomers, and they are withdrawn from the market in 1991. For example, terodolin has came up with a cardiotoxicity and then found it because of the R enantiomer and withdrawn from the world market in 1991. Similarly, bifenadrine. So these drugs are withdrawn from the world market because of toxicity believed to be due to stereochemical origin, and they are withdrawn. So we have to be very careful with dealing with chiral molecules. So having said that, so I think I'm able to let you know that, convince that there's a need for chiral perspective, and if the molecule question is chiral, you need to be very cautious in dealing with them. Yeah. Now let's go into before quickly getting, because I find a lot of teachers, and maybe I don't know, you must be aware, or I thought I'll take you through a rediscovery of stereochemistry. It's a very interesting piece of, you must know about the development of stereochemistry, because it's very important. I find that during 1950s to 1970s, which is called the golden age of drug discovery development, stereochemistry was largely ignored, neglected. People didn't bother about stereochemistry during that period. Then if you look at that period, let us try to understand the stereospecific awareness level then, but today the awareness level is totally different. That is because of the rediscovery. We'll see why rediscovery a little later. So let's try to understand the stereo-specific awareness level. To understand, I went into some of the books. These are taken from actual publications and it's not my own. So the references are there. So normally to understand, chiral, science, you look for pharmacology textbooks. You're supposed to have some indications there. So what you've done is you look into titles of these very, very standard books on pharmacology, the year of publications here, the authors here. And there are 3 columns here. You look at this closely, 1, 2, 3. The 1 indicates that whether the textbook has got any stereo selectivity or related terms in the index. Number 2 is discussions on implications of stereo selectivity. Do you find that in the book? 3rd is avoidance of stereochemically biased data. If any of these are present, you get a plus mark, which means that there is an awareness of stereochemistry. If nothing is there, it means that point of time, there is no much awareness about, chirality in pharmacology or because, that's a subject which deals with drugs. So we picked up that, and you find here, none of these books have got any reference on has any plus point on this count, which means that the awareness was pretty bad in 1987, 87, that period. Now you look at some more books. Then we went on to some more pharmacology books like Goodman-Gilman, very, very, leading book. But if you take today, Goodman-Gilman, you will find here references here plus. See, from that time, only 2 books had those references. Forster, Basic Pharmacology in 1986, you find all the 3 sections get one, which means that book has some discussion on these aspects. And even another book on Bowman and Rand has also got 2 points here, which means that in general, the period of 1980s, late 80s, there is no much awareness about stereochemistry in textbooks. Why you're talking about textbooks is once you find information in the textbooks, then it percolates into the classrooms, and then of course it comes into the research, etc., etc. So there is no reference in the textbooks means that awareness level is pretty bad. Then even we'll look into some more books which might be supposed to have is like pharmacokinetic books, because you talk about kinetics. So we're trying to find out whether there is any information on that. You find none of them has. These are all very important books. Pharmacokinetics, Tucker, Roland Tucker, Bennett, Gibaldi, no indication, Notari, no indication. So you find that this period of time, 90, 85, 86, 87, none of the books has got, most of the books don't have any reference on stereochemistry, meaning that the awareness was pretty bad. Now then, the period of after little late 80s and in 1990, there was a rediscovery of stereochemistry. Let us try to find out, what are the events and stimulants for the rediscovery of stereochemistry? What made this happen? So I have taken from my search and analysis, I find 3 basic factors are majorly responsible for rediscovery of stereochemistry. One is the famous thalidomide tragedy. Then, of course, certain scientific publications, and of course, the development of tools, chiral technology, because when you don't have a tool, you cannot, get into a science. So the exponential explosion of chiral technology, all these and regulatory interest, these 3 put together as, resulted in a rediscovery of stereochemistry. And before getting into that, let me quickly take you into the chiral timeline. It's very important to pay respects to your, the great scientists who have put in a lot of hard work to get to science what we are here today. In 1815, Biot, French physicist and mathematician, discovered optical activity, which means stereochemistry we know as early as 1815. In 1848, the French biologist, microbiologist, and chemist Louis Pasteur, the first to separate enantiomers under under microscope. It's called a physical separation. This was done after 30 years of the optical activity discovery. So it took 30 years for Louis Pasteur to separate enantiomers, a very big landmark there. Then came, of course, the landmark theory put forward by all of Van Hoff and Lebel, the 2. One is a Dutch chemist, other one is a French chemist. They independently put forward the theories on 1874 simultaneously on one put on called the tetrahedral nature of carbon. Other is the same as that, the sp3 carbon, which is the forms the molecular chirality principle of. We today talk about the chiral carbon, which is established almost in 1904, and now we are almost we are in it is now 145 years approximately, because we are in 2021. So the theory was established as early as 1874, but it got so much time to develop. In fact, Van Hoff got a Nobel Prize for his in work on chemistry in 1901. So very, very important discovery. Then, of course, came the Fischer, the carbohydrate chemist, who went on to propose the lock and key mechanism and enzyme substrate interactions and all that. That's a very important landmark in trying to explain chiral discrimination process. That's called he's a carbohydrate chemist. Then in 1904, Lord Kelvin introduced the term first time in chiral into literature. It came in, the term was introduced, chiral, from Greek word. Then 1926, the Scottish pharmacologist, Cushne he was the first person to document difference in biological activity of enantiomers. Very, very important. He first offered a definite example of a difference between enantiomers of a chiral molecule. It took almost after 15 years after Van der Waals theory was isomerism was put forward. So he went on to say that the levohyosamine is twice as active as racemic from 1904. Levoadrenaline twice potent as racemic from as vasoconstrictor of 1908. So first time he put on record on literature that there's enantiomers can have difference in biological activity, and that was the foundation for what we have today talk about chiral pharmacology. So the foundation for chiral pharmacology was laid way back in 1904. Then came, of course, this book I'm sure you'll have in the library. Mislow. Mislow is a very, very fundamental book on stereochemistry, introduction to stereochemistry. He reinforced the term chirality into literature, and so we started learning that. Then 1966, the famous Kahn in gold prologue rule came in, which we are using today, which is in the IUPAC nomenclature system. The RS notation and XZD notation for olefinic or double bonds here. And he got Nobel Prize for his work, not on for stereochemistry, but on alkaloids, antibiotics, and enzymes, the stereochemistry of natural products. So this is how the history of chiral timeline, if you look at it, and now just get into rediscovery, the thalidomide tragedy. This is a very, very, of course, the molecule was wrongly implicated, but this is an example which frequently used. Thalidomide is a molecule with a chiral center. That time they didn't know that it's with a chiral center, which means the molecule can exist in a pair of enantiomers. This is S thalidomide, this is R thalidomide. Okay. This was introduced in the world market in 1956. This drug was given to pregnant women, to control their nausea and vomiting in the early trimesters, to pregnant women. It was given, and they found that after a couple of, then they found that babies born out of the mothers who have taken this drug has a clinical condition called, in 1960, they found it's called as a teratogenic effect, drug-induced toxicity. So babies born had a condition called phocomelia, deformed hands, and it's called thalidomide babies. Very painful situation, and so they found that the mothers who have taken this thalidomide drug had these babies these problems called phocomelia, and they found it to be a drug-induced toxicity or teratogenic effect, and the drug was withdrawn from the world market in 1961. So 1961 they withdraw the drug. Then research was on, and they were able to resolve the enantiomers in 1970s, and they found that thalidomide has got an S thalidomide and R thalidomide. S is the reason for the culprit here, or the bad part of it, teratogen, and the R has got the sedative effect. So thalidomide tragedy, had a profound and sustained, change in the ways we look at chiral molecules, because this become a big case, and a lot of companies have sued for that, compensations, and so this tragedy has able to create a lot of impact on the way we look at chiral molecules. And today, enantiomers are treated as two different chemical entities, at least with respect to chiral drugs, like a polypharmacy. When I say paracetamol, ibuprofen, it is two drugs. When I say ibuprofen, you think the enantiomers are two forms of the same compound. It is not that. You should treat them as two different drugs, like any other polypharmacy or fixed drug combination. So thalidomide tragedy has got a major role to play here. I'm not going to further details of thalidomide because I'll take a little heavy on that. I don't think I need to do that. Any queries, you can ask me later. So this is one reason. Another reason is scientific publications by one of the scientists called E.J. Ahrens from Netherlands, and he's written volumes of 10 volumes on drug design, very classic books. He went on to publish a lot of articles which are very breakthrough articles. You call them as the period of 1984. I'll just go through those titles. 1984, Stereochemistry, a basis of sophisticated nonsense in pharmacokinetics and clinical pharmacology. 1986, Stereochemistry, a social problem in medicinal chemistry. 1987, Stereochemistry in analysis of drug action. 1987, same time. Bias in pharmacokinetics and clinical pharmacology. Another paper, Implications of the Neglect of Stereochemistry in Pharmacokinetic and Clinical Pharmacology. Selectivity, a natural aspect of molecular biology, a blind spot in pharmacokinetic and clinical pharmacology. Stereochemistry of bioactives and biotics, a pre-partial attitude in medicinal chemistry, pharmacokinetic and clinical pharmacology. The 1980s, stereoselectivity in pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetic. The times he went on to publish on very, very important journals, and I got references. I don't think you can, if you want, you can ask me later. All very reputed journals where he is able to make these remarks. And what happened is these articles criticize the practice of conducting pharmacokinetic and pharmacokinetic studies, investigations on racemic therapeutics or racemic drugs, and ignoring the separate contributions of the individual enantiomers. So they are doing studies without bothering about the enantiomeric behaviors. So what happened when we started publishing a lot of papers and then went on, these papers served to crystallize some of the important issues surrounding racemic drugs and stimulated much discussion in industry, government, and academia. This is another important aspect for rediscovery of stereochemistry. So this is another reason for that, besides thalidomide tragedy. So the publications and of course the tragedy. Along with that, of course, you have the explosion of chiral technology. Today you find there are various separation tools, physical, biological separation science, and we are talking about. You find chiral GC, chiral superfluid chromatography, chiral TLC, chiral capillary electrophoresis, chiral HPLC, so many. So when you have all these tools to do, then people are able to separate and investigate. So this also is a reason for rediscovery of stereochemistry. So three major issues I've been able to track from the literature studies, what I have done for risk. These are the three reasons for rediscovery. So the another question is, what is the impact of this rediscovery? What's happened today? What is happening? So the attitude change has happened in three broad sectors. One is impact on research and development. Another one is impact on academia. We see, for example, we are talking about that. We are talking about chiral science, so there's an impact on academia. Then regulatory control, of course, there's a lot of control has been added up. So these are the major impacts, and let's see how does it reflect on. And what is the attitude today? Okay, today it's believed that enantiomers are treated as two different compounds and not two forms of the same compound. I think you read the sentence very clearly. Enantiomers are treated as two different compounds and not two forms of the same compound. That is, each version of the chiral twins is essentially viewed as separate chemical species. For example, I tell you, paracetamol, ibuprofen, you clearly know paracetamol is a compound, ibuprofen is a different compound. Then you call them as fixed combination, or you call them as a polyforms. Similarly, when I say racemic, say for example, ibuprofen is racemic, both the enantiomers should be treated as two different compounds. It is being done today. That's a major change. Of course, impact is that, there's a lot of birth of new journals like chirality. You've got specialized journals, enantiomers, asymmetry, tetrahedron. These journals only take up studies on chiral molecules and if the data are available. If you hide aspects of chirality, these journals will not accept papers. So these are very specialized journals. Then changes in editorial policy of journals. Then there's major changes, constitution of an stereoisomeric committee by the Center of Drug Efficacy Research of USFDA. So USFDA has got a wing called CDER, and CDER has got a very specialized cell called stereoisomeric committee, which will look into all the issues and aspects concerning chiral drugs, stereoisomeric drugs. So it's a very important, which means that the field is of great significance. Then, of course, exponential explosion of chiral technology, the emergence of the new field called chiral pharmacology. Then the FDA policy in place. You can go to this website in 1992. This website will tell you the current regulatory policies. So these are all the impact. Then you've got chiral assays today. We talk about chiral HPLC, chiral capillary electrophoresis. All these tools are chromatographic tools are available. There's a specialized branch called chiral chromatography. Then enantioselective synthesis. This is a very interesting point here. And you find in 2001, 3 scientists got Nobel Prize in chemistry for their work on chiral, developing chiral catalyst. Very important. For example, I look at this is Knowles, Sharpless, Nayori, and I'll just let you know what they've done. He's from St. Louis, USA. That time he was plus 80. I don't know. He's still alive. Born in 1917, and he developed chiral catalyst for hydrogenation reactions, and which was employed for the manufacturing of L-dopa in industrial production. He got half the price money. So that field was so much important that time. Then of course Sharpless, he got half the price money. He developed a chiral catalyst for oxidation reactions and went into the synthesis of beta blockers. Great scientist. And Nayori from Japan, and he synthesized hydrogenation reactions and both other way oxidation. And his catalyst was employed for the production of levofloxacin, which you find in the market today. So that way, that's an impact on the people. Now, of course, you've got a new nomenclature system in place, which is being used widely. Just a few glimpses of that. See, these are the current nomenclature. You don't use RNS and all that. You just say levofloxacin. I understand it's a pure enantiomer of ofloxacin. You call them as chiral switches. I'll come to that a little later. Then, of course, levocitrazine, then dexketoprofen, resifetrine. These are the kind of nomenclature system which we employ. So the final impact is that the component enantiomers of a racemic drug may differ widely in their pharmacokinetic, pharmacodynamic, and toxicological profiles. So there's a need to track the profile of both the enantiomers separately in a chiral drug development. So if your molecule is racemic, your all the study need to be from a mirror image perspective, whether you perform kinetic, dynamic, or toxicological profiles. Otherwise, your data will be of no use. And there's a lot of pressure again from regulatory agencies like US FDA, others for the medicines for the production of enantiomer chiral drugs. And the basic intention of developing chiral specific drugs is that, less complex, more selective pharmacological profile, improve the selectivity, less complex pharmacokinetic profile for the better pharmacokinetic properties, improved pharmacodynamic profile, pharmacodynamic properties, and potential for improved therapeutic index. So these are the basic, you got to improved therapeutic profile, safety, you try to switch over to a chiral specific drug. Okay, having said that, let's just try to look at the current status and prominence of chirality. Yeah. So let's look at what is current regulatory environment. Let's look at the chiral business today. Let's look at chiral chemicals, unichiral medicines in the market, chiral development. We will be spending around 10 minutes on this. Pharma companies which are engaged in chiral research. Look at the regulatory environments, and it's very promising, and the regulatory environments are very favorable today. There's increased demand for enantiomer pure compounds. There's a growing prominence or importance of single enantiomer drugs. There's a rising significance of chiral chromatography techniques. So all these are encouraging, chiral research. Then, of course, the regulatory guidelines across the globe strongly encourage the development of single enantiomers and discourage stereoisomeric or other racemic mixtures. And in fact, if you look at this, further they are putting so much pressure that approval will not be granted to drug containing more than one isomer unless the pharmacokinetic, pharmacodynamic properties of each could be described and, more importantly, justified. If you look at here, the US FDA, European Union, Drug Agency of and Japan depend for enantiomer-specific data on kinetic, dynamic, toxicological profiles of chiral drugs to assess safety and efficacy. I'll give you one example here. This is a drug approval from Japan 1918, and it's an extract. And you read the last paragraph here. When the drug concerned is a racemic body, it is recommended to investigate absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion of each enantiomer. Otherwise, the approval will not be given. So if the molecule concerned is a racemic drug, then your investigation need to be enantiomer specific or from the point of absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. Otherwise, your data will not be approved, or your approval process will not be further processed. Now look at the revenue from chiral drugs. You find that there's a big market, global market, to reach somewhere around 7.6 billion by 2022 from chiral technology products. So that's the size of chiral technology market you see. And this is an interesting slide which shows the revenue from chiral chemicals of market, and its projections from 2013 to 2024 in US $1 million. See here in 2013, the blue is pharmaceuticals. The revenue is somewhere around $10,000 US $1 million. And it's believed to be somewhere around in 2024, it's going to be double, almost double. That's a revenue. That's a kind of revenue being looked in chiral technology. So the field is pretty growing fast. That's a trend. Chiral drugs. Yeah. This is the slide, of course, I did show you. You find that 67% of the drugs in the market are chiral. And I'll show you another slide, interesting slide. This slide, is a chirality of new molecular entities between the period 2002 to 2011. And 2001 to 2010. This is from FDA from 2002 to 2011, new molecular entities. And you find that the graph, you find here the amber or the yellow color is the one for single enantiomers. It is going from almost somewhere around, it's 70% here, and now we have got in 2011 it is somewhere around 60%. So there's a steady, and the blue one is the racemates, which is very less 3%, and the achirals are somewhere around 9%. Achirals still there, of course. And if you look at the worldwide data of a new molecular entities between 2001 to 2010, you find that the single enantiomers are somewhere around 70%, and the achiral is somewhere around 6%, and of course there you don't find any racemates at all. So that's the trend is towards enantiomer pure molecules. That's the point I'm trying to make here. So that's how the progress is. Well, let's now try to look at the unichiral medicines which are employed in therapy. I think this must be interesting to you. You find a number of drugs are in the market which are used today. See. The drug list is here. You find the indications where it is used and which therapeutic area it is being used. See, for example, S-amlodipine, S-metoprolol, S-atenolol. These are all anti-anginal or anti-hypertensive drugs belong to the category cardiology department. So these are enantiomer drugs, and you call them as chiral switches. I'll just switch. I'll just take your definition of that. You call them as chiral switches. So chiral switch means I have a racemic drug. Okay, I move from a racemic drug to a single enantiomer. It could be a R or S, whichever, levo or dextro, whichever it is. You are moving from an approved racemic therapeutic to a pure enantiomer for improved therapeutic efficacy or safety. And of course, managing the life cycle of racemic, that's another economic point of view. I'm not going to that. So when you move from a racemic drug to a pure enantiomer, this switch, this is called as a chiral switch. And these are treated as new, they're not treated as new chemical entity, but you treat them as selection inventions. This is an example here. See, you find here is a ibuprofen, you find here racemic mixture. I switch it to a single pure enantiomer for improved therapeutic efficacy. But to do switching, you need to perform what is called as bridging studies. You need to prove that you need to submit data to US FDA stating that by separating these enantiomers to a single pair, to a single enantiomer, I am not sacrificing any beneficial effect that exists in the racemic drug. So you need, there is a protocol there. So you carry out those studies and you convince them that I'm switching this for a better benefit. I'm not sacrificing any data that is crucial on the racemic drug. So that is to be done as a protocol which will be followed. So having said that, so these are switches. I think you understand now. From amlodipine you get S-amlodipine. Metoprolol you get S-metoprolol. This is esomeprazole is from omeprazole. It's a proton. All these are proton pump inhibitors from the gastroenterology department or category. Then you find from antihistaminic, all these are bronchodilators, antihistaminic, levocitrazine. Levocitrazine is there today, you must be using it. From citrazine, you move to levocitrazine, pure enantiomer, chiral switch or enantiomer drug. So these are in use in the pulmonology department. Then of course, antibacterial levofloxacin, which is from ofloxacin, infectious disease, many more. So a number of drugs, all these drugs are chiral switches which are in use in drug therapy. Now, if you look at the Indian situation, Indian scenario, drugs in India, these drugs are in Indian market. S-amlodipine, S-metoprolol, dexketoprofen, all these drugs are available, and most of these are being manufactured by Emcure in Pune. Of course, Cipla do some contribution. Then, of course, Reddy is also there, but Emcure is the most active player in chiral research in India, in Pune. So these are the unique chiral means enantiomer drugs in the Indian market. So it shows the kind of importance there. Then, of course, chiral drug development, you find chiral analytical tools very, very important in chiral drug development, especially on these aspects. For example, unique chiral analytical tool for the quality control of formulated chiral drugs to confirm the manufacturing process induces no acceptable changes in enantiomeric purity of the final product, and that stereochemical integrity may be maintained for the proposed shelf life. So that means that when you manufacture, you make sure that it's stable, the enantiomeric purity doesn't change. When you keep on the shelf, integrity remains the same. So these aspects need to be, to understand these aspects or to study these aspects, you need a chiral analytical tool. Then monitor outcome of asymmetric synthesis. You perform a chiral synthesis, you create a chiral molecule or stereogenic center. To understand that, you need a chiral analytical tool. Then to guarantee the chiral identity and purity of an active substance before each batch reaches in chemical development. So you in a chemical development plant, when you synthesize a chiral pure substance, then you need to check the chiral identity and purity. You need a chiral analytical tool. Then assess enantiomer-specific pharmacokinetic, pharmacodynamic, toxicological activity profiles. You need that. When you perform a bioequivalent study, for instance, enantioselective bioequivalent study, you are looking for pharmacokinetics. Then for both the enantiomers to know that, you need a chiral analytical tool. Then to monitor the formation of chiral metabolites, in vivo studies. I give a drug, the drug gets metabolized into chiral metabolite if it is. Then to know that, to understand, quantify, track, you need an analytical tool. And finally, to detect the potential configuration inversion. You call this as chiral inversion. Like ibuprofens, like certain, if the chiral carbon is not very stable, then there's a tendency for this S to move to R or R to S. You call this as chiral inversion. This is because of chiral instability, and to track that, you need to have a chiral analytical. So these two becomes very, very important in chiral method development. And sorry, I just skipped. I'll just come back here. I'm here, I think. Yeah, 1 minute. Chiral development. Okay. I'm there. Yes. Okay, fine. Sorry. Now just look at the companies. Pharma companies which are actually involved in chiral research in India. Dr. Reddy's is involved. Cipla, Zydus Cadila, Sun Pharma, Torrent. Desalis, of course, is a Japanese company in India and Hyderabad. They do manufacture chiral stationary phases, and they do take up projects, assignments. On a freelance basis. You pay them, they'll separate you and give you pure enantiomers by using preparative HPLC and then superfluid chromatography techniques. So these are possible. And of course, Shasan is another company in Pondicherry. They are also involved in chiral. So these are Indian companies engaged in chiral research. Good. Having said that, now just look at the application portfolio and research opportunities. They're coming to a close. Okay, this is if you find that chirality, as I said earlier, penetrates into all the branches of pharmaceutical sciences. Chirality, see, for example, in drug development, we just saw that how does it, this plays a role here in fine chemicals, in manufacturing, fine chemicals, in chiral synthesis. It's a lot of play, pharmaceuticals, pharmacokinetic and toxicological investigations, biotechnology products. If you want to illustrate one or two, this is, see, look at this, there's a variety of, somewhere around 8, these are biotechnology products in the market, which are all chiral molecules, and these are synthesized by recombinant DNA technology, and it's a huge market, So you find chirality has a lot of, I'm not going to, this is for the life science, actually, life science people. I just put one slide there for you. So you find, then even agrochemicals, I did go through that, and I find that large number of agrochemicals employed are chiral, and so they have difference in their activities, and there's a scope for studying and analyzing them. So you need a tool there. Flavors and fragrances, we saw limonene, like that. A lot of fragrance flavors are there, which are enantioselective, and these tools find applications there. So you find this is many more selected application domain where chirality has a role to play. Now just look at being teachers. What are the research opportunities you have in there? Because generally it's a feeling, pharmaceutics mein ho mere ko isme kya koi zyada importance nahi. It is not that. I'll give some examples here. So if you are a synthetic chemist, the roles you can do in taking up chiral projects, you can develop synthesis for enantiomer drugs. You can synthesize chiral intermediates, the people got Nobel Prize there. Develop chiral catalyst. You can develop membrane technology for the production of enantiomer drugs. There's a possibility for separation, stereoselective bioconversion. This is majorly done in Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. They're done in the biochemistry department. Then chiral switch strategy can be done. So these are the areas where a medicinal chemist can focus attention on. If you're a pharmacologist, of course, you can get into enantioselective pharmacological studies like pharmacodynamic and toxicological profiling of chiral drugs. Even you can investigate and validate the existing dose of chiral racemic drugs. Many times you decide a dosage, and the metabolism may be different, and the doses can be varied. There are many reports. This is one interesting report here. See, the oral dose of verapamil need to be larger than was originally believed, necessary based on the plasma concentration, since the drug that reaches the bloodstream is enriched in the less potent enantiomer. This is an investigation and reported in 1990 Chemical Engineering News. So when you have a racemic drug, if you investigate, you can find, you may find that the eutomer is eliminated quickly, so you may have to readjust your dosage. So there's a scope there for pharmacology people. And as I said earlier, there's a specialized branch called chiral pharmacology or stereopharmacology, so people can look into that. If you're a pharmacy practice, of course, there is always a possibility for drug therapeutic monitoring. Then a stereoselective drug interaction investigations can be done. Of course, in case I add up more topics, I'll let you know here. Then analytical, of course, analytical medicinal chemistry, there is always because you need to develop it for any purpose. You need chiral assays are very important, because whether you synthesize, whether you investigate, the initial requirement is you need an analytical tool which can assay or quantify these enantiomers separately. So method development becomes very important, especially in formulations. Then in biological matrices important. Then there's another area called like impurity profiling. You look for chiral impurity profiling, which you can do because you check chiral purity. So there you need, there's a lot of scope out there for analytical chemists. Then developing stability indicating chiral assays. So these are the areas where an analytical medicinal chemist can focus on. Then pharmaceutics is an area where the large scope is there. The dosage forms, I just list a few of them. Enantioselective bioequivalent studies can be performed on racemic therapeutic formulations, number one. Number two is evaluation of enantioselective release studies from formulations containing chiral excipients. In fact, I have done my doctoral thesis on this. We are trying to study the release pattern from chiral. I got a chiral drug. I take a chiral excipient and create an environment where, one of the enantiomer is released, another enantiomer can hold, or we don't know how it released. So you study this enantioselective release patterns, and that will be a very interesting field. Then, of course, if you are done, your transdermal patches, there's a possibility for enantioselective transport into skin from topical dosage forms containing racemic drugs. The only requirement is your molecule. If it is chiral, then you can explore all this. If it is an achiral molecule, you can forget this topic. So enantioselective permeability studies can be, you're coating tablets with many of these polymers. Many polymers are chiral, so there's a possibility there again for enantioselective investigations. Then dissolution testing. You routinely do dissolutions for a drug, but if it's a racemic drug, you try to quantify for enantiomer how it is released, which is released more. So there you need to use a chiral HPLC or another tool to quantify. So that becomes another interesting part. Then your microspheres, you're coating with so many polymers. So if the drug is chiral, the polymers are chiral, then there's there's a possibility to explore there on the bioavailability of concentrations. Then lastly, very important is development of a stereoselective drug delivery system. There are a lot of work going on, but not into actual practice. Here, what we do is you are trying to, instead of separating enantiomers, I got a pair of enantiomers, I want to hold one, which is not important, and I want to release the other enantiomer. So I formulate, I take the chiral drug, I try to formulate with an excipient. Sometimes they use imprinted polymers, and then hold one enantiomer and the environment such that other is released. So there's no need to separate them. You call them as stereoselective drug delivery system. This is a very important, and a lot of publications are there. In fact, I did my thesis on this. So you find, you be any branch, so there's a scope here, and I strongly believe that this chiral science penetrates into all these branches. So one need not feel bad about that. I don't have an option. And before another 5 minutes, I think I have to close down. Let me take you a very important message to all those young faculty members. I want to tell you that the stereochemistry, or the chemistry in 3 dimensions, is a key characteristics of pharmaceutical science, or pharmaceutical science is what you may call it, and even life science in general. And chirality is often crucial in drug research. And I appeal to academia, to all the people, to provide more space for chirality in their deliberations on pharmaceutical science research, teaching, and also try to reduce the so-called stereophobia that exists among both even faculty as well as teachers. I'm telling you repeatedly this because I strongly believe that a student likes a subject or hates a subject depends on the interest, or how good the teacher is about to motivate him. If your teachers are very motivating, naturally you develop an interest, and the subject will be liked by it. So the student need to love the teacher, and the teacher should be able to inspire the students. And I have wonderful teachers on stereochemistry, like starting from my professor, from my BPharm classes to my masters here with Professor Kishan Singh Padmasri. He was one of my very reputed teacher, and I still, I dedicate my all this to him only, because that's how teachers can, inspire. So I strongly believe you give more space to this in your all your day-to-day interactions. And I call upon teachers to empower student community with chirality, which is an integral part of drug discovery, development, and process. And further, to those who look for grants, I want to tell you that chiral technology is a trust area of research in projects in the UGC, DST, DBT, AICTE, CSIR, almost all funding agencies. In fact, I myself, as an anomaly, got in almost 1.2 crores in the DRS phase 2 just for chiral technology and nanotechnology together. So it's a trust area. And the only thing is, if you have a decent research proposal on hand on chiral technology, and you've been in any branch of pharmaceutical science, it doesn't matter, we'll fetch you your funding. The only requirement being the molecular understudy should be stereoisomeric in particular chiral. Otherwise, if you're using a chiral, you're working on chiral, of course, it doesn't come into picture at all. So there's always a scope, because people generally feel, this is an expensive tool. Naturally, it's an expensive tool. Each chiral column will cost you around ₹1,00,000, but that's okay. You apply for projects, and then once you convince your management, definitely your university will give you funds, no issue. And then you come out with publications and reasonable good findings, and they'll appreciate that. So to wrap up, and today, chirality is an essential, drug research kit component. I welcome you all to the, chiral landscape, and take a look at it, the potential research opportunity. It is something like this. You go to a hotel, you look at the menu card and ask for an, some, dish, and then you try it. You don't like it, next time you don't use it. Similarly, there's a big chiral landscape out there. You people go in there, try, do something and try. If you like it, you pursue, otherwise you drop it. So please make an attempt. There's a big landscape out there. See, the molecular understudy is stereoisomeric, in particular chiral, then all the investigations need to be done from a mirror image perspective. else the data generated will be meaningless or nonsense. So very, very important. If the molecule is chiral, make sure that you have a mirror image perspective. You look through the glass. And if you don't generate such data, that data will be of no meaning, or even say no nonsense. So we live in a three-dimensional world, and we should insist on a three-dimensional science. If you have any queries, I'll be glad to answer that. And before closing down, I thank you so much for your time. And this is, I just want to let you know that, I made a couple of contributions in Wikipedia in the form of articles. I'm a retired teacher, so keep me busy. So these are my recent articles. It is already in Wikipedia. You can just log in with Wikipedia and search for these articles and go through. These many information might be available there. One is on chiral drugs. Other one is on chiral switch. And I have one more reason. Next week will be off on chiral analysis. I got an article now going on. And I've done more than 150 edits on Chiralpedia. So, and of course, my websites are there. And next month, I'm expecting to launch a website on chiralpedia.com. And already there's a website called valliyappan.com. I'm trying to switch it to Chiralpedia. Something like, the intention is to provide an online resource for people who are interested in drug chirality. Whatever, sources are available, which are free and whichever I have, like my presentations or my YouTube presentations, whatever available, and literature which are freely available will be out there. So students who are interested can log in and see that. So with this, let me thank you for your patience and thanks for your time. And I'll be glad to answer any queries if you have. Yes, I'm done, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Can the screen be on there still? Or you have any queries? Shall I keep it there?
Sir, you can switch
Yes,
on
sir.
your video. And
Yeah,
then we can have the
I'll do
queries
that.
from the chat.
I hope I'm in time. I have not taken too much more than your required time.
No, sir, you are perfectly fine, and
Okay.
we are within the permissible time limit.
And Adi, 10 minute pacha hai bas.
Abhi 10 minutes and sir.
I hope I have not
This is for
made
the
it. I hope I have not
question
made
and
it
answer sessions, and
very scary.
No, not at all, sir. You are very, very interesting, sir.
Sir,
And you have excited and sparked all of the participants and the organizing team for working on chiral drugs, chiral suppressions, and all, sir.
Dr.
I request
Valliyappan
all the
Kannappan.
participants to put up their questions, their queries in the chat box.
Yes, Dr. Saurabh. There are two questions.
Yes, sir.
And before the questions, and in fact, many of the students and faculty, they have a lot of appreciation for the lecture, and they got inspired, and now they wanted to go into chiral switches.
I'm glad to.
Separate
Hopefully, they should switch it.
And in fact, I'm wondering and surprised how concisely and how pinpointedly you have covered a data comprising of chirality of the nature, taking us back to 150 years, and what is happening at this particular present days of chiral chemistry and D and L isomers, LIVO and L and R isomers, how our medical treatment of the drugs is getting changed, including the thalidomide strategy.
Yes, sir.
Strategy. And earlier, you have not only this, you have referred so much of the text and books which were quoting, and that means it speaks the voraciously how much you have analyzed and how much you have read these particular books in terms of chirality. And in fact, one has to be a chiral to understand this particular chiral chemistry. Just like the nature, why it is synthesizing only L amino acids. So if you think the chirality and it is easy, and of course now as per the KICT PCI, this particular chiral chemistry and stereochemistry is an endangered subject, and in fact it's a very, very residual. I don't know what are the reasons why they are not encouraging.
What's it? I think is it a question to me?
Yes, sir. I know it's not question to you, sir.
What is it? Sir? I just I was like trying to look at the chat box.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
what is
chat
it?
box.
What is it you asked me, sir? Sorry. Not clear.
That all. What is that? Nilima Dhingra, that all with a wide coverage from basic concepts to current status. We all know clinical chemistry, chiral chemistry delegation is costly process. Can you suggest some basic techniques easily for separation in lab? Till date, I practiced the column chromatography, but yield we get is very, very low.
No, you're talking about separating which molecule?
Chiral molecules.
It's a pure molecule or it's a plant product?
Nilima, is this a plant product?
You mean say you got an enantiomeric pair and you want to separate that?
Exactly, by simple techniques.
Yeah, that depends. But the point here is any compound to separate and you want to identify the enantiomers, you might need a pure standard. Hello?
Sir, another Harsh is quoting that I am an undergraduate student at DIPSA. Stereochemistry is currently in the curriculum. Your presentation has helped me subside some of the stereophobias. Thank you, sir. So it has helped him overcoming the stereophobia.
Oh, that's fine. I'm very grateful to that.
And
somebody is Nilima Dingara, somebody.
yeah, Nilima Dingar.
Not able to see them?
Can you show some, sir? Ambili McCord, he wanted to have that. Can you show some light on the chirality and its challenges in the synthesis of small peptides which are used for the therapy?
Oh, because I have not done any work on chiral synthesis. Rather,
it's a mathematical synthesis.
I am mostly restricted to chiral separation analysis. Synthesis I'm not into, so I think I'm afraid I may not be able to, because I'm totally restricted to the separation analysis, especially chiral chromatography.
And we have Eka Rabkhar, very informative and interesting presentation. Excellent talk by some comments. And Sangeeta P. Saha, thank you, sir, for sensitizing us on chiral science. What is need of the hour? So, in fact, she's also got inspired. And this is Harsh Dikshar.
Okay.
And Suvendu Singh, great, sir. Thank you so much. Tapas Kutia, excellent. And then Pashupati, very informative. And Nilima Dhingra, a talk with a wide coverage from basic concepts to current status and costly process. That is actually all we know, that chiral chemistry delegation is costly process. Can you suggest some basic techniques easily for separation in the laboratory that actually by column chromatography she is interested?
There are people now worked on TLC, but I think the simplest way is to buy a chiral column, and otherwise you can do. You can, have a separations can be done on a regular HPLC column using we call as an indirect method. You derivatize the analytes and then you can separate that. Suppose you don't have funding for buying chiral stationary phase. What you do is you derivatize the analyte and then you separate using a regular HPLC column. That can be done. That's the easiest way. In fact, I have done my thesis using indirect method.
And Dr. Welpan, Dr. Kannappan, Valliyappan Kannappan, sir, actually I like and I love your name.
My name is Valliyappan and Kannappan is my father's name.
It's a very
people call me Pathak and all used to call me Valli only. They call me just Valli.
It is actually rhythmical. The two words are very rhythmical. Like my childhood stanza.
Yeah.
And sir, actually what I feel, instead of going for a chiral synthesis, you have the racemates synthesized and separation is the easiest part. Otherwise, chiral separation is much costlier and it may not be viable, I suppose.
No, now with the advancement, it's okay. What they do is, if you don't have facility, you can give to this. We've got Dysel company, in Hyderabad.
Yes, sir.
They do immediately preparative chromatography, separate, and then put in a superfluid chromatography and flash evaporator and give you the pure enantiomer in a day. You get the products. Very, very, very fast. They first do analytical separation, they check for it, then scale up to preparative. From preparative, they take it to when one higher they can go, and then immediately put on a superfit chromatography and separate the pure enantiomer. शाम को दे देंगे आपको pure enantiomers. But for an academic institution, it might be a little difficult unless you develop a facility. But that should be done using grants. You must try to get grants. Up Delhi mein hai. I know you will be contacts there, and all these, your what do you call that?
Sir, actually,
SAP mein le sakte hain.
this is true. The subject needs to be percolated, and one requires an inspirer to go through this particular subject. Since you happen to be Professor Harkishan Singh's student, it is that you have an enthusiasm to work on this particular line.
Yeah.
And I also had a little bit of this particular enthusiasm of chiral chemistry and stereochemistry,
Wonderful.
because I learned from Dr. B.K. Rajan, who happens to be the very first.
I know. But he was in Ranchi mein na, Ranchi.
Yes, sir.
He is Harkishan Singh student, yes.
Yes, he was the first student of Dr. Harkishan Singh.
I know.
And, this subject we learned from him only.
Rajdan. I know.
Rajdan. Balkishan Rajan.
Wonderful.
Sir, I have one question, sir.
Sure.
Lastly. Okay, the D and L isomers or cis-trans isomers like cis and trans diethyl stilbestrol and other D and L, ephedrine and other type of these particular drugs. And now we are trying to switch over to a pure enantiomer of this particular thing for a better therapeutic activity.
Yeah.
Is there any possibility of that? One isomer, can we take it as a internally in vivo biochanged into a desired isomer for a long sustained activity?
No, I didn't get your point. You were trying to say you take racemic, then goes into single enantiomer inside in vivo.
Yes. And other isomers which can be converted into the desired.
I'm not sure, but there is for example, there is an example of, the NSAID drugs,
Yes, sir.
non-steroidal. Ibuprofen has a tendency, all of them mostly, they switch over to from an, distomer gets switched to eutomer in vivo.
Yes, sir.
It's a unidirectional chiral inversion. That's how that has been reported in for ibuprofens in NSAID drugs. You take a racemic ibuprofen, that's why they switched it. The distomer gets into the eutomer, and because of that, there's a possibility of stereochemic toxicity. So they separated, but that's one drug reported for these kind of behaviors.
And in fact, I think it's very difficult also because the cells respond to this particular isomer.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Maya. I hope I have, thank you so much. I hope I have done my job okay or well, whatever it is.
You have
Yes,
done
sir.
it very excellently.
सौरभ को बोलना है आपके उसके बाद मेरे को feedback सब भेजिए. I will try to improve next time.
Back to
Definitely, sir. Definitely, sir. You have wonderfully improved our understanding regarding chiral drugs with your very prominent lecture, and
Thank you.
definitely you have successful in establishing the prominence of chiral science through your innovative talk, sir.
Thank
And
you
we
so
would
much.
definitely love to hear from you on chiral separation, sir, in the next
And
lecture.
again,
Yeah,
As soon
man,
as
because
possible.
you wanted this, I didn't go in there.
Yes, sir.
But in the next
We'll love
lecture,
to
we shall
listen
be
to
hearing
you
on chiral
again.
separation, sir.
Yeah, we'll talk on chiral chromatography. Next week that will be on Wikipedia.
Okay.
Sir,
So,
yeah.
Sir, I have
If you
been a
want-
regular visitor to your Wikipedia accounts regarding the two recent contributions, chiral switch and chiral drugs. And we have also further sent it to our students groups and all. And we shall be giving you feedback also as
Sure.
already requested by you.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for listening on chiral science.
Sir, in your honor, we have developed one certificate, which is a digital certificate.
Badhiya.
Harsh, can we show the certificate?
Hello, sir. Harshad. Hello, sir.
Harsh?
I think he's mute. I think unmute करना उनको. Mute किए हैं.
Yes, sir. Yeah, this is right here, sir. So I request Dr. Bodla, Dr. Pathak also to felicitate Dr. Valliappan with this certificate.
Oh, thank you so much. वो तो फिर भी मेल में आ जाएंगे ना.
Yes,
Ji,
sir.
sir. We shall send
Sir,
it. by
please,
speed post.
we are giving by our hands, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I'm receiving it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your
Thanks,
kind presence, sir.
Sir,
Thank
one
you.
more last query from Nilima Dhingra.
हाँ,
She is asking to share your websites.
वेबसाइट में वही आईडी है.
Already it is shared and you can search with the name only.
Right
yeah.
now in the chat box itself, I shall be sharing for the participants the website address and also the Wikipedia addresses also. Where the website will be.
विकिपीडिया नेक्स्ट वीक में लॉन्च होंगे. अभी वलीपन कण्णप्पन खाली रहेंगे.
Okay.
विकिपीडिया
All
will be
these
launched next week.
resources I shall be. And sir, some of the participants are also in the chat box requesting for some like if some presentations and these kind of resources can be shared with them.
It is already in the, if you go to, ask them to go to LinkedIn. LinkedIn में है मेरा presentations हैं.
Okay.
उनको बोलना walliappankannappan.com में भी जाने का, उधर presentations are available. They can click and view that.
Okay. Thank you,
Next
sir.
week बोलना. Next week they can see everything there. Yeah.
Okay. Even the presentations also.
These small presentations to understand the concepts I put. Not this presentation.
Yeah.
इतना लंबा कोई सुनेगा नहीं ना. 10-10 मिनट का होता है.
Okay. Okay.
Small, presentations where they can understand the significance, behavior. मैंने split करके डाल दिया है.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Dr.
My pleasure.
Saurabh, Dr. Saurabh,
Thank you so much, sir, for gracing this
before
occasion.
proceeding it, how about having Dr. Valliyappan on a regular basis for some interactive lectures for the PG?
So that would be actually great. Like this is the best proposal we can have for today, and we shall be definitely requesting Professor Valliyappan to again and again visit and educate us and educate
At
our
least we
students
can
also.
have some online lectures with him.
Online
we do.
lectures, like lecture series and
My
all.
pleasure. I'm at your service. Let me know what we done. I'll do that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
sir.
Bye bye.
Thank you
Take
so
care. Bye
much,
bye. Can I now stop my sharing?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, how to do? Do you want to continue? This will stop other screen. Okay. Okay, na? Bye.
Yes, sir.
I can leave now, right? Bye bye.
Take
Right,
care,
sir.
sir.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
And, dear participants, we can now have a session break up to 11:45. So the session will continue here in the Zoom, but we can take a light break of 10 minutes, and we shall resume in the next speaker from 11:45 sharp without any delays. Thank you, Bodla sir, for your kind presence and handling the session. For the benefit of all the learners and on the behalf of organizing team, I thank you a lot, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Saurabh. You're welcome.